Hello, everybody. Um,
Hello.
I'm Hounsi Fredasi, um, goddaughter of Mambo Soleil, student of Vision of Dawn Tour, full spectrum doula, and divine feminine healer. We have decided to do a recording today, and so I am with my co-host.
Hi, I am Hounsi Lovanna, goddaughter of Mambo Soleil. I am also a student of Vision of Dawn Tour, a student of Vodou, a Hoodoo practitioner, a dream alchemist, and spiritual life coach. I feel like if our intros change, it's because we both have so many titles that we do so many things that it's sometimes hard to remember them all. But that's who we are today. And yes, we are doing a recording today. We're going to be looking through some Hoodoo questions on Reddit today and just seeing what happens.
Yeah, regarding our titles, like I'm really trying to get to a point where I can just condense it all into something. And so I feel like divine feminine healer encompasses everything that I kind of focus on in terms of like I
Mm-hmm.
do Reiki healing, and a lot of that is around the womb and the healing of the divine feminine. And then I craft a lot of spiritual tools, and again, a lot of that is around like just spiritual development and aiding you as a priestess and um all the things that I've kind of started being attracted to and doing in terms of titles are like really involved with the woman, with the womb, with the divine feminine. And so, yeah, I think that that's a title that kind of encompasses everything under all these
Yeah,
various certifications and stuff that I decided to get. I kind of hoard
yeah.
information sometimes.
No, I like it. I think it's concise. I think it fits you a lot.
Thank you. So, like Lovana said, we're just going to go on Reddit and answer some questions. I am also crocheting as we speak. I am making poppets today. If you want any poppets for any type of working, or you want to learn more about doll magic, look at my website, exceptionallyu.com, theexceptionalu.com. All right. So the first question was Ancestors don't want to work with you. That's the title. A general question. I never been closed or raised around any of my family. Those that I do know of were vehemently against any type of conjure and root work. Others were also very unstable, like serial killers and monsters. I don't know who I can work with. So, Lovanna, as a senior priestess of Vision of Dawn Tour, how would you um, respond to that post?
Yeah, so I think it's a common misconception that you're kind of limited into like ancestors that you knew directly, or in this case, it seems that this person only knows like either ancestors that weren't the best people when they were living and treated them poorly, or they're just not connected with other ancestors. And so there's two things that I would say to this. The first is that um, your ancestors, yeah, they maintain. I would say a lot of them like maintain like some of their personalities, like when they transition over. But when they transition, at least in African traditional religion, their work doesn't stop. just because they're no longer a part of the physical and human realm. And so they are, if they are working with you and they are assigned as your guide and to work with you, then they are going through their own periods of elevations. And so a lot of the antisocial behaviors that they might have exhibited when you were alive are things that they have worked through or are working through. And so they're going to show up differently for you um, as you continue to venerate and work with them. And then another thing that I would say is that all have so many ancestors. And so a lot of people, when they first start out, they're only thinking about their ancestors in terms of the people that they knew. So usually, like, they're dearly departed. But there are so many more ancestors than that. If you think about, like, your immediate ancestors and then their ancestors and their ancestors, we have access to so many, and so many of who are highly elevated ancestors. And so it then a lot of times will turn into the question of, like, if I don't know my ancestors, then how do I connect with them? And or I don't know anybody's name, like, how do I connect with them, right? I typically say, like, if you just sit down and pray and just start off by saying, my benevolent ancestors, or something that at least signifies, like, you want to talk to the ancestors and you want to connect with ancestors who have your best interest, and just go from there when it comes to working with them and building the relationship. And then you'll I'm just gonna pause 1 second longer to edit this pause out. um, you will be able to connect with your ancestors and work with them.
Yes, I think you answered that very beautifully. Like, I don't think that I have anything else to add, because that was so thorough. Um, but yeah, we talked about this during our Hoodoo 101 mentorship, and I'm so excited to do it again in February. We did this.
February? Yes, early
Yeah,
February.
at the
Yeah.
beginning of February, we will be bringing back the Hoodoo 101 mentorship, or the Sacred Roots Hoodoo mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
So if you didn't participate this time around, we would look forward to seeing you guys in February to join. And just look out in the Sacred Roots Facebook group on the links for that, the advertisements for that. But if you wanted to know more about ancestor veneration and um, Hoodoo 101, the videos are on our webpage. If you all are interested in learning more about Hoodoo, ancestor veneration, we did teach in the free mentorship of all these things. That video will be available for replay on Hounsi Lovanna's website. And her website is
HarmoniousHealingStudio.com.
all right, amazing. Let's go into another one. Dad has gotten arrested. Baby sister has an evil spirit attached to her. Both situations are somewhat connected. My dad was dealing with a difficult ex girlfriend and sought custody of my little sister, whom he had with her, because she wasn't taking care of the child. The ex didn't take this well and seemed to have put a working on my father and those close to him, using my sister in some way. Since her arrival, the child's, a series of unfortunate events have occurred, culminating in my, I'm sorry, series of unfortunate events. It's so dramatic. Okay. Anyways, um, culminating in my dad getting arrested and being taken away from us, with someone close to us potentially facing death. I'm not looking for solutions. I just needed to share this because I don't know how to process this news. So, if somebody came to you with that story, how would you respond to them?
Mhm. Mm. There's a lot to unpack there. Um, because I would be really interested in knowing, one, how do they know some of this information? Like, did they get a reading, or is this something that they've just like made all these assumptions, connections with, as far as, the child being the source, or whomever being the source of the working that was put on. So I would want to do, or have them like have a divination done to like confirm that this is actually what is happening, right? So like that's the first thing. And you know also, like, I would suggest cleansing and protection work, especially for the child, right? Like, if one, that's something like, you want to protect your children anyway, but to if if the child is being worked, and then as a result of that, like, other people are also being worked through the child, then you want to be doing some type of removal and cleansing work and protection work, and then from there, I think that's kind of like where I would start with, but I'm actually like really curious to hear your thoughts on it.
So, since she wasn't or well, I don't know if it's a she. Since they weren't looking for advice, really, I would just be like, okay, let's unpack this. Like you said, right? Like, I think it's very important to separate paranoia from what's going on spiritually. And is when you're someone who's anxious, because I'm very, very anxious, um, trying to figure out, am I really sensing something, or is this a part of my anxiety that's leading to paranoia, is very important. So I think from the very first part, it's like, okay, the ex is upset about, the child being removed from her, but is she really going to somehow use the child as like a vessel to cause all of these things to happen in your life? Like, is it the child, or I don't, if she's upset that the child was taken from her, I don't foresee someone doing something to the child directly so that it can impact, everybody else. I think that's like, where does that come from? What ideology do you have around how you can use a human child as a vessel in that way, right? And then, um are these events actually correlated with her? Like, what was
Mhm.
going on to cause the father to get arrested? Like, was this things that he was doing or something? Because they don't say what he was arrested for, right? So, like, what was going on? Why was he arrested? When was he arrested? What happened to the child? Like, there's just so many questions to kind of go down. And yeah, and there's all the other things. The person, I think they didn't mention how um oh yeah, someone close to them potentially facing death. Like, again, like, how, are they sick, have they been ill, is this random? Like, there's just a lot of questions around there. So, like, it's like, let's try to breathe for a second. Let's breathe, and let's unpack, and then let's kind of formulate divination questions that are going to get like, they're going to extract the type of answers that we're needing, versus just, am I, something generic like, did she hex us or is she throwing work at us, that's not going to give a clear answer, because you're going to go into it with the mindset of all these things are happening and it's her fault. But like, you really need to dissect this and see what's going on. Yeah.
Um, yes, all of those things. That also, you brought up a good point in terms of like just kind of like making all of these connections and just kind of assuming that work is being done on you. More often than not, you're not being hexed. Not like if there are things, if it typically if there is like a really big cycle of events that's happening and it's like causing you to think that there's some type of hex or work being thrown, often it is you, like you or like someone around you is usually the source of that. It's more of like you are kind of manifesting your own chaos, or even a lot of times what ends up happening is that based off of like your own actions or like what you've been doing, it's not necessarily a hex, and that if there's something spiritual going on, it is actually that it's your own spiritual court like trying to get your attention and hold you responsible. Very rarely are you actually being hexed, which is why I think it's really important, like Hoodoo Fredasi said, to like sit down and unpack, is this happening, and really have strategic divination questions around who, what, where, when, why, how type of thing.
Mhm. And I think there's an interesting point. It's like, I feel like so many people run into Facebook groups and run to spiritual practitioners, and they're like, I'm being hexed. Somebody's throwing hex at me. I fell out with this person and she dabbled in witchcraft and now they're cursing me. And you're right, it's not as common as people think. And then,
Mm-hmm.
how do I say this delicately? Um, a lot of people don't, they run to, um, they run to the internet and they just kind of grab these recipes or spells and think that's hexing, right? Like, they just kind of pick something out of the hat and be like, oh, this is going to do all this damage, when they don't have relationships with their ancestors. They don't have relationships with deity. They don't have all these things. They're really just throwing something, that they're not enchanting their herbs. They're not, really putting in the work to make this an effective spell. They're just doing something really quick. They're throwing stuff in the freezer. They're putting people in jars without really thinking about the mechanics behind spell work. And so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times the person who's just dabbling isn't actually formulating an effective enough spell to attack you. Like, unless this person has been really, living that life and doing this, then, like, I mean, a random person on the street isn't, like, the people who are threatening to hex you and do all this. They're not actually the ones who have the knowledge around doing it, because they're not going to tell you. They're not going to threaten you. And if they are for real practitioner and they're like, oh, I'm going to hex you, it's probably they're just being facetious. I don't truly believe that somebody who is actually going to throw a hex or a curse or do some work against you is going to announce it in real life.
Yes. At least someone who is actually strategic. Yeah, actually somebody who does the work. One, because like, think about it, you're kind of losing part of the element of surprise. Like, why would you tell somebody, like, say that you're both in like the spiritual community, or like even if not, if I were to tell you right now that I was gonna hex you, maybe like at least logically, if I heard somebody say that they were gonna hex me, okay, I'm just gonna go protect myself. I'm gonna be ready for it. I'm gonna counter it. Like, why would, and what you should be doing anyway, but that's really giving yourself away. And if it's the case where they actually do know a little bit of something, it's really telling that they don't really have the discipline or the forethought to not showboat like that. And I think that that says something about the efficacy of their magic as well. So yeah, I think you hit it right on the head with that.
Hmm. And that goes back to that paranoia piece of just kind of, is this just your anxiety running away from you, or is there actually something going on? And that's why it's so important to um, do a divination, to learn how to do a divination for yourself, or to get one from a skilled diviner. Um, because oftentimes, and a reputable diviner, because a lot of times if you are like, oh, somebody's texting me in these Facebook groups, how do I get rid of it, and you got people jumping in your inbox or like, I can help you and this is what you need to do, what if that's not the appropriate, um I'll say, prescription to remedy what's being thrown at you? Like, what if it's some a particular type of hex was thrown, and then you are just going to um do a random candle with the random herbs, and that wasn't the herbs that you needed to counteract what was going on? That's why divination is just so important around that.
Yes, 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 I agree. And that's why you can't necessarily just go to a Facebook group or even look up a spell that, and it might, and here's the thing, there might be somebody in a group who knows a spell that has worked for them, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right one for you or that it will work for you. Just like she said, like just like you're saying. Um, Unfortunately, I lost my train of thought because there was another point I was going to make. Um, yeah, I guess I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, I'm looking for another one that we can discuss. Help with shifting through the voices. I chose this one because I'm clairaudient and I'm interested to see what they have to say.
Okay.
First, no, I am not schizophrenic. Forgot what the clair is called, clairaudience, but I absolutely love silence. I'm a chronic daydreamer and exist in my head 95% of the time, but it's not crippling. I get done what needs to be done, but in my deep thought like states, or when I'm heavily pondering something, it's a few voices, a man and a couple women, that I hear answer questions I'm thinking about. I come from an Indian and Geechee heritage. I have more visions than some, but the voices are new. When dreaming, I'm I know I'm dreaming or traveling. I'm very aware all the time. It started a few years ago. Tried to ignore it, but it's more common now after I went to sleep and my eyes rolled back and started to jerk, and it was like a movie, but I'm watching me watch myself, but I can't make out who the voices belong to and wonder if I should even ask. Even in my nightly travels, it's always someone trying to get my attention and talk to me, but they're always white and I walk off. I don't, it was whitey. That's why I was confused. I don't like talking to people on this plane, yet alone another. How can I shift through it, or how can I hone in on it to figure out who it is? Honestly, I don't even want to ask, but it seems like I need to. Um, that was a lot deeper than what I thought it was going to be. But as
Yeah.
someone who is clairaudient, and the first time my clairaudience activated, it was kind of overwhelming and scary. Like, I didn't even know I was clairaudient. I think I've said before in one of our previous lives that I learned that one of my strongest clairs was clairaudience through a divination someone did for me. And the way that it was activated was through venerating my ancestors, because it was a gift that my ancestors wanted to activate and help me to increase and enhance. And so after that time when I did a big feast and I, called them in, and that's when I started hearing their voices. Like the first time, it felt like I was really at a family reunion. Like I was sitting there and I could hear everyone laughing and talking. It was like I was actually in a huge space. And I enjoyed it at that moment. But then on my everyday life, and I'm walking through the grocery store and I'm just hearing all of these people talking to me, I'm like, whoa, like not while I'm out in public. Because like when you hear a sound, sometimes you just want to respond to it. You're just like, hold on, now stop. Then you kind of look schizophrenic, right? Like she's talking to herself, all of the things. So it's like, okay, what do I do? And it's appropriate to tell spirit to slow down or to have only one person speak at one time. And I actually had to do that. I woke up in the middle of the night one time and everybody was talking to me. It was like everything they had to say was so urgent. Like there's just so much. And I was like, wait a second. I cannot gather what you're saying. I can't process what you're saying unless you slow down and speak. And so I had one person speak to me and tell me what I needed to focus on in that moment. And I slowly like developed relationships with my ancestors, different ancestors, so that I can differentiate between who's talking to me now and, versus the other. And now that I work with deity, I again had to develop a relationship. For those that speak audibly, I had to develop a relationship with them, and I had to learn, what does my, like, because I'm also clairsentient, what does my body feel like when they're around versus just my grandmother? Or what does it sound like? How is it a whisper? Is it louder? All of those things are things that you kind of gather over time. But if in the present moment it's all coming in way too fast and just too overwhelming, you are able to let spirit know that you need some space, you need some time, you need one person speaking at a time. You're allowed to put boundaries on your gifts so that you can develop and grow them. And I think oftentimes that is something, like, as a new spiritualist, that you don't realize is, especially if you're coming from Christianity, right? Because I think that when you think about how you're supposed to fear and revere and acknowledge God, you don't feel like you can set any type of boundary around spirit or a different type of primordial force, right? Because, like, who are you to do that? And so, like, I think that was one of the biggest aha moments when I believe it was Mambo Soleil who told me, like, you can let them know that that's too much for you, and that's the boundaries that you need to set. It's okay, and they will honor that, because they're here to benefit you and to aid you on reaching your destiny, and so I wouldn't say any spirit would, like, kind of cross your boundary in that manner. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you covered that. Well, yeah, you covered that pretty thoroughly. I don't have a ton to add because I think my experience was a little bit different in that um, I kind of I don't like now that I think about it, I guess I intuitively knew that there was a possibility that like my clairaudience would come in. And so when it did, I was just like, okay, cool. Like it didn't feel like super overwhelming. I was just kind of like, oh yes, I had asked for this. I'm glad that I can hear you. And then I don't know, my core has never like been they're not like super chatty. They do mess with my clairsentience a lot. Sometimes they're clingy, and I still have to set boundaries where I'm like, can you please like somehow move? Like there was one time it felt like everybody was like literally suffocating me, and I'm like, I don't know how this is possible, but can you guys take like two steps back or something? Like what is happening? Why are you guys clustering me right now? And so yes, it is necessary um and possible to set boundaries with spirit.
Yes. Somebody commented and said being an introvert on the astral plane is wild. I think that's funny. Let's see. Oh, I think this is it says write down what they are saying and see if you can get it in automatic type of writing. And that is a very good idea
Ooh,
too.
that's a good
Um,
idea.
a lot of times I don't do this as much anymore, but in the very beginning, I would start hearing things, and so I would start to write it, and then it would come out more clearer. It just I would be able to just write it out and then go back and read what I said, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's what you were trying to say to me. Um, and automatic writing is really interesting as a gift to have, and when spirit does it, um, it's just everything is fascinating to me when it comes to the spiritual, but that is a good ideal too.
Yeah, I like to use automatic writing even just like if somebody asks me if they like text me and just ask about like a dream or even just a divination. Sometimes I'll write things out because I have noticed that there are certain things that come out in automatic writing that might not come out when connecting in spirit in different ways or connecting with other clairs. So that's really good. I was also thinking in terms of the astro realm, you can I'm not sure, you know, what this person believes or work or like what entities, if any, that they work with, right? But in our
Mhm.
tradition, you can work with your ori, which is the spirit of your head. If you want more information about ori, definitely check out tapping the power within with Ayana Van Zant. That's something that is covered in our free mentorship as well. But you can work with your Ori and pray with your Ori and have them be a protector for you when you're traveling through the astral realm. So they could, if you are, you know, like wary or scared of other spirits while you're traveling, or even protect you in in terms of just dreaming in general. That is a resource that you have.
Good one. Okay. This question says, how do you stop someone from spiritually spying on you? Does anyone know of hoodoo spells that can prevent someone from spiritually spying on you, doing divination on you? My spiritual team has been warning me that someone has spying on me for a moment, but it never clicked what was going on. Something took place in my dream state last night that had never happened before. I confirmed with my reader today that this is indeed what was happening. Any information would be greatly appreciated. The first thing I want to say is if you have a reader, because I see this a lot in Facebook group where they're like, somebody, I did get a divination done and they confirmed it. Why are they not telling you what to do? Like,
Hmm.
that was the time to figure out how to correct the situation and what to do about it. I can understand
Hmm.
if you were doing a divination for yourself and you haven't,
Hmm.
you just wasn't aware or didn't have the forethought in the moment to go ahead and divine on that question around what to do. But it baffles me every time I see that of what do I need to do. Can you hear? Oh.
I can hear just a little bit. I'm so used to tuning them out. But yeah, that really kind of leans into the point of there being a difference between a reader and a diviner and a practitioner. You really want to, if you're gonna get a reader or a diviner, then yes, like they should be, like, they don't have to do these things for you, but they should at least have some general idea of like next steps or like how to handle the situation. Like it shouldn't be a situation where it's just like, yeah, someone's spying on you, bye. Like what? like what do I do? Yeah, I don't know. Sorry about that. Like what?
Mm-hmm. Because imagine if you went to the doctor and was like, I have all these symptoms. I mean, I know it happens sometimes, but like you go to the doctor and you're like, I have all these symptoms. And then they just be like, oh, okay, you're diagnosed with this. And then you're just sitting there like, okay, well, what medicines do I take? What's the treatment plan? And you have to go to another doctor who has the same skill set to, or well, if they didn't refer you, right, you got to go to another doctor to get a referral to go to the specialized doctor if need be. But like that's impractical
Mhm.
to expect that. So like vet your readers. But back to the question at hand, and how do you stop someone from spiritually spying on you? There are several ways. One is layer your protection. You should be doing protection work over yourself regularly. Um, like regularly. Some things may need to be daily, and then you layer that on with a weekly thing or a bi-weekly thing or a monthly thing. But you should um, ask your spiritual court in what ways that you need to protect yourself from monitoring spirits. Now, once you figure out there are monitoring spirits that are and people spiritually spying on you, then you again in your divination should figure out how can you stop it. Some methods that I've used is my I have a dagger, my Zili Freda dagger, and this one has really been helpful in getting downloads on who's reading on me, who's trying to monitor my social media, all that information of people who have just ill intent, who are smiling in my face but want to stab me behind my back. All of the information is because I've enchanted my dagger in such a way that I am asking spirit to reveal these things to me. And so you can use amulets. Mambo Soleil, I believe the video is on her website, soleilconjureshop.com. She has classes on how to protect yourself from envy and jealousy. And in there, she details a what was it? A spray? It was a
Mhm.
spray that can protect you from people who are monitoring you and monitoring spirits. You can use things that are head washes and spiritual baths to cloak yourself or, to protect you from that type of intrusion in your life. Do you have any other suggestions?
I mean, I feel like you covered everything that I was thinking of in terms of layered protection, and also like crafting different things, and like cloaking yourself is also really important. Like if they're going to keep doing it, and for some reason if they're going to keep doing it, then yeah, just make it impossible for them to even like get a good reading on you and just call it a day. Um, so no, I don't. I feel like you covered it. It's really important to the divination piece is so important, and why we keep coming back to it is because we can't. We're not going to sit here and give you an outright prescription or spell because, like we've said a lot, it really depends on your specific situation. It depends on the spirits around you and how they show up and like what kinds of like things that they would do to work with you and what specific herbs, if you need to work with herbs, are appropriate for you. So it is still a case by case basis, but overall, these are some of the things that I think are helpful in cases where people are trying to monitor you. Are going to be your layered protection, your specific workings towards combating those and repelling those spirits, and then also cloaking.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. Let's see. Let's see if this is a good one. What's your understanding of spirituality? I used to have a lot of rituals and I used to do a lot of things. And for a lot of different reasons, I don't do them anymore. But I will say that I'm in a good place. I will also say that there's some other stuff that's happening around me that I notice. But I also feel protected, but I'm just kind of like, I don't know, wondering what other people's thoughts are because I don't talk to anybody else about this type of stuff. So I believe they may be talking about spiritual regimen, maybe?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what the question what is the heart of their question? We can go with spiritual regimen in terms of yeah, it sounds like a spiritual regimen in terms of just having a set of like routine practices that you feel connected with. I think is kind of what they're asking in terms of like what our thoughts are on spirituality.
Yeah.
Um, it's oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, yeah, I think so. That's since they mentioned in the beginning, like they used to do some things and they don't do them anymore. I feel like that was kind of the direction they were going. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll include that too in terms of if you aren't like practicing a set religion and aren't following a certain set of protocols and are kind of wondering are looking hold on, sorry, my phone's about to go. Okay, yeah. Um I would say it is okay to trust your intuition when it comes to certain things that you should and should be doing in terms of building your spiritual regimen, because what you don't want to do is do things just because you should, which I really appreciate that person being like, yeah, I did these things, but it didn't really fit, so I'm trying some other things out. And so I think it's important to be open and open to change in your routine so that you don't get stuck in doing things just for the sake of doing them. I tend to be a really spirit led person when it comes to having a spiritual regimen. It's important to follow a spiritual regimen because it's going to keep you connected to the spirits who work with you or walk with you. It's going to help you be in more in tune with yourself, like I said, in terms of intuition, any clairs that you might have. It or even like being more in tune with like the earth and just the general environment around you and making you more aware to people and their intentions, even if it's not the case where you want to be practicing a specific religion or practice like hoodoo or anything. um, mm, Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Fine.
Okay. Um, do I have anything else in terms of spiritual regimen? Um, I guess I'll just say, I think things that anybody can incorporate, no matter where they are in their journey in terms of, spirituality and uh, being connected in their spirituality, prayer to whomever, higher power that is for you, and your ancestors, God, spirit guides, the universe, prayer and meditation, I think are foundational because that's going to get you in touch with your intuition. That's going to get you in touch with other spirit guides that may be helping you along with your journey. And like from there, the more that you're in tune with yourself, you'll know what other things you might need to do, like in terms of like fasting, for example. You'll get a better idea of like what your body does and doesn't like, and how that impacts you, um, physically, but also mentally, but also spiritually. You'll get a good idea of that. You'll learn, like I start to feel off if I don't do this certain, like if I don't cleanse my head every day. And that is a less rigid approach. It's a more organic approach when you start, like I said, being more spirit led and more intuitive led, versus just kind of doing things for the sake of doing them. So I like this person's curiosity. It doesn't, you don't necessarily have to have strict parameters all of the time. But as you continue to build and grow in your spirituality, um, a, a spiritual routine forms around you. I will say there's like an asterisk for people who like literally never do anything or like forget to do everything, and people who feel better in routine. It's still okay to like have some regimen should be in place. Like, yes, if you need one, and or you're just starting and you just don't know where to start and you feel like you're not in tune with yourself to know what to do, then yeah, start with like prayer, meditation, and journaling, and maybe fasting a couple of times a week and just see what happens in terms of your spiritual regimen. And then from there, you again, it might feel more organic and natural to you. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Um, yeah, I think that it's important to realize that there aren't in hoodoo, there aren't like strict reglement and regimen that you need to make sure that you're doing daily. It's very personalized to you and where you are. Like for example, things that I had to do when I was living in Indiana versus things that I do now living in Texas are completely different. Like,
Mm,
not only is the energy different from state to state and the type of protection I need in one area different, but also like my mood is a big part of my spiritual regimen. Um, as someone who is neurodivergent and who experiences different mood disorders, like it's just if I'm very depressed in Indiana because it gets darker, it's colder in that area versus Texas, then what I need to do is make sure that I'm doing things that are keeping me in a um, in a better mood, that I'm not spiraling down into my depression. And so, what my daily routine looks like as someone who suffers from depression is going to look different when I'm in an environment where I'm not always feeling depressed, where I feel like my depression is a lot more controlled. Um, and so, I think it's where she was saying, or they were saying that like they used to do things and now they don't do them anymore. That's okay, and that's perfectly fine because it's always going to change. It's going to change as you elevate. It's going to change as you grow, as you learn more about yourself. Um, the things that I have to fast regularly, right? And so fasting as a 33-year-old versus fasting when I was a Christian, and fasting as a 23-year-old is going to look wildly different, just because of my body needs. The time that I need to fast based on how my body functions. I like to think of spiritual regimen as a way of maintaining homeostasis. I really have started to focus more on a holistic approach to the way I live. So everything
Mm-hmm.
is connected: my spiritual regimen, my beauty regimen, um, my physical health regimens, all of that is starting to become more succinct. So this is just a lifestyle at this point. Like, it's not really about spirituality. Spirituality is just a part of who I am and how I choose to live my life, right? So I think that sometimes we can be so focused on compartmentalizing all these different pieces and avenues, but really it doesn't have to be so strict and regimented and like rigid. Rigid's the word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You want to
No,
say?
I definitely I like what you said about having a holistic approach because you're right. It's very much all connected to yourself. Wait, no, it's all connected together, and that's why a lot of parts of what your quote unquote spiritual regimen are going to look like are things that you would naturally do to take care of your mental health or take care of your physical health, because they're very much so all connected with each other. So I really like what you said about like it being more about maintaining homeostasis and how that might change based off of the stage of your life. That might be changing based off of your location. It can change day by day, and so I think that's why it is also important to like understand that it's not going to be. It doesn't need to be the strict regimen because that kind of almost sets yourself for up for failure if you just are like thinking about it in terms of like black and white and it has to be this, and then like if you fall off or you have to do something differently, it like sends you into a type of panic, and that's not the goal at all. If it's feeling that type of way, if you're like feeling anxious about like having to complete certain steps like every single day, um or even like sometimes I've seen people get like fearful if like they don't do certain things. Like if it's causing you more like distress to like have to stay on track, it's probably not what you should be doing right now because again, it's throwing off something else, right? Because now you're stressed, you're worried. Is that helping you spiritually? Is that helping you, or is it probably hindering you at that point to overthink it to this degree? So yeah, I agree. It should be more of like a holistic, and it gets to the point where it's a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. I like what you said there about like, is it causing you more distress than it's helping, right? Because that is the thing, that this is meant to aid you in some way. I mean, of course, there are certain, depending on the tradition you're practicing, there are certain things that you may have to sacrifice, or learn to sacrifice. But again, it's for the betterment of your elevation, and there's a reason why. Um, but, like, for example, I used to feel like I had to keep everything on like a strict schedule. I had to wake
Mhm.
up at 5 a.m. and I had to meditate for 30 minutes. And then I had to go for a walk for this long. And then I had to do my head wash. And then, there's just like, it is this. And it got to the point where I was like literally telling Spirit, like, this is too much. I'm not even able to maintain this, because once I missed that 5 o'clock wake up call, I feel like, oh, I missed out on my opportunity to meditate, and now I can't do it anymore. And it would throw my whole day off. And
Mhm.
they were just like, well, why do you feel like you have to do it that way? Right?
Mhm.
Like, meditate when you remember, and pray to us when you remember. And I remember us having a conversation about that one time where I was like, I'm so upset that like I cannot make sure I'm praying at these times during the day. And then I was sitting there and I was like, I do pray multiple times a day. There's sometimes I just
Mm-hmm.
literally am walking and praying. And I don't even
Mm-hmm.
realize it at this point because it's so second nature to just say a quick prayer sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Or um and so yeah, it just kind of becomes second nature at a certain point, and you kind of know when you need to shift because you start feeling like something's off, this isn't working like it used to be, and you kind of just know when to shift it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. And I think that um but I think that sometimes people come in with preconceived notions of like what prayer should look like or what like meditation even like I've had someone say like, "Oh, I didn't realize that like I didn't have to like sit on the floor to like meditate, that I could like meditate different ways." And I'm like, "Yeah, you can meditate by doing yoga." You know? And so giving yourself permission to kind of explore what really works for you in your spiritual routine instead of feeling like you have to do things the exact same way that other people are going to do, like the exact same ways that other people do, um, are is going to be important. Or even like we've been saying, your routine starts off one way, and then it comes to a certain point where like it's no longer serving you. It's okay to change it. It's okay to let certain pieces go for a while if they're not serving you. So, yeah.
Yeah. Very, very true. I wanted to get your opinion on this comment though. So while we say certain things change and certain things you may not need to do anymore, I think like this comment is a little concerning. So it says, God is in me. I don't even mess around with my altar too much anymore. I finally put water on it after it was dry for a while. My ancestors are in me too. I feed them by feeding myself and my children. I'll probably cook sometime this week and put food on it, but lately I've just been interested in learning and venerating myself. How do you think about, or what do you think about that as a
You know
Hoodoo?
what? This is not an uncommon thing, actually, especially like the God is in me, and like, why do I have to do this? And why do I have to pray like to my ancestors for protection? Why do I have to venerate them? Shouldn't they automatically just be doing this? And I know a lot of it does kind of, I've noticed it a lot with the people who are coming out of Christianity, but not necessarily just them. Um, yeah, that Yes, do what works for you, but maybe not in that case. And here's why. I'm trying to think of how to articulate why that is. Yes, we can say that your ancestors are in you, and that everyone is connected, and that we're connected with God, but they're still separate entities from you. They're still their own beings. And so they do require like other ways of you exchanging energy with they don't necessarily always benefit. Like if you're eating, they're not always gonna benefit. That's for you, that's for your physical body. And it does have some like not mental, it does have some spiritual components in terms of like what the food like physical like some physical reactions that the food causes can also like lead to spiritual like reactions, right? But that's not they're not going to be able to access anything from like it's not literal that they're inside of you. Like yes, but like they are their own entities, and so it's important to give them their own food because one, what they don't even like the thing you're eating. They're not going to eat. If there was some kind of way that they could get sustenance from you eating, what if they don't like what you're eating? Or what if it's not what they need in order to carry out the work that they have to do for you? Which is another consideration, is that, we are venerating them, we're giving them food, we're praying to them, because we are grateful to them, and we want to see them elevate. But it also helps them support us. You know, it gives them the energy that they need in order to support us fully. You know, it gives. Sometimes they need certain things because they're going to use it for a specific reason, and so to completely deny that aspect because they're inside of you and God's inside of you. Um, no, it's not as functional. You might feel like it works for you, and it might be working for that person in a way that they think works for them, but they're not going to be fully manifesting. Their spirits are going to be hungry. Your spirits are going to be hungry if you're not feeding them. If you're feeding them by eating, and you think that they're somehow gathering energy by proxy, it's not working in that way. So yeah, that. Yeah. What are your thoughts on? What are your thoughts? Do you have any more thoughts to add about that?
Yeah, I think that in terms of like not messing around with your altar anymore, I think that like sometimes like when we decide that this is going to be our path that we take, we have to recognize and be aware of the commitments we are making to spirit when we decide to set up an altar,
Mhm.
especially if we're working with deity. And it's important to recognize that spirits can be angry. And if you are regularly venerating your ancestors and giving them water weekly, giving them food weekly, and then all of a sudden you just stop, they're still expecting that from you because that's what you had started to do. Um, and we need to understand that all of, even though it's physical to us, it's
Mhm.
energy, like you were saying.
Mhm.
It's energy that is being transferred from this plane to that, right? Like so above, so is below. And I think when you understand that concept and you understand that I'm not just, let's use peaches for example, because that's what my grandma recently, let me on a tangent real quick. I ordered DoorDash some groceries, and I got 4 bags of peaches. And my grandma really likes peaches, and I hadn't gotten peaches in a while, and so I feel like she kind of just took over and was like, "I want some peaches," and so it was a very blatant, "We need peaches" type of thing. And so it's not just the peach that I am setting onto her altar. I am giving her the food she really enjoys, but also like if you look at the metaphysical properties of peaches, then you're like, okay, if I'm asking you for these things, grandma, then that property of the peach is what helps you call in, right? If I'm
Mhm.
asking you to help me with my prosperity work, I'm asking you to help me with my relationships and me having good friends and etc etc. If I'm asking for all these things and grandma's like, hey, I want peaches is going to help me get this thing called in for you, then that's not just the physical property of its own, right? um
Mhm.
Simple like coffee. We know that coffee, a lot of our ancestors drank coffee. We know that from jump. But we also know that coffee is has caffeine and it's going to get things moving. You know how your body feels when you've had coffee. So if you're asking your ancestors to work with you in such a type of way and you feel like it's urgent and you're asking them, hey, I really need this, I really, you really praying to them about it, then we
Mhm.
know that coffee is going to help speed that stuff up because they're able to move faster. They have the energy to move faster. And if we think of the um supernatural, like, I think sometimes that even though we believe in the supernatural, we don't actually conceptualize that our world is just a reflection of the spiritual world. Like,
Mhm.
it's literally, we talk about the veil being thin and all these things, but like, it's actually all happening in the one area. Like, I think using the word different planes makes us think of it as like two separate planets, right? But
Mhm.
no, it's one planet, one area where you have, this is what I can see with my carnal eye, and this is what I can see with my third eye. And I think that's something that we really have to conceptualize and understand when we're giving offering and venerating our ancestors, that it's not just it's not just what's the word, uh just kind of like a task, or
Mhm.
like, some repetitive type of, oh, I'm just doing this just because type of thing. Like, enchant your offerings before you give it to them, and maybe that will make you feel like it's providing more of a, I don't know. I hope I made sense.
No, I think you covered a lot of things that were really great, and um, yeah, and you're completely right about it being, every it's not some far off distant place when we say like the spiritual realm versus the physical realm. It's all right here, like you said. Um, I really enjoyed what you said about the peaches and how like your grandmother likes the peaches, but they're also like that fruit is helping her help you like call in the things that you've asked for. I think that's really important. And if you've gotten to the place where it feels like it doesn't matter if you're working your altar or not, you have to examine how you were even interacting with your altar in the first place. Like, were you ever like how consistently were you um, you know, giving them water and feeding them the things that they actually wanted to get? And like, were you checking in to see if these were things that they actually wanted, or were you putting whatever on the altar? And
Mm.
then like, not pouring into it and not praying it, and then your altar was never like charged. It never had a charge. And so, to that person it probably might not have made a difference if they interacted with their altar, if they weren't intentional about the things that they were putting on it and how they were venerating their ancestors to begin with.
Totally agree. This was fun. Like, I really
Hmm.
like going to Reddit and just kind of picking out questions and seeing what was in there. So we'll have to do this again. Um,
Definitely.
if you're watching, please, like, in the comments, put any questions you have that you would like us to answer the next time around, or any topics that you would like us to discuss moving forward. Also, tell us what you would do in some of these situations. How would you answer some of these people, or what advice do you have based on your own experiences? That would be lovely. Well, that was the Empress Journey for this week. And we would love to see you soon. Um, Real quick, Hounsi, Lovanna, what um, what are the things that you have available at this time?
Yeah, so my deadline for the Dream Alchemy workshop that I'm doing is probably past by the time we get this up. But be on the lookout for future workshops. I'm super excited to dive into dream magic and dream alchemy with you all. It's going to be super exciting, and I'm definitely planning on doing it again. So keep an eye out for that. In terms of like what else I am doing, um, just follow me on social media. I am Lovanna Conjure everywhere. YouTube, Instagram, Threads, TikTok. Uh, Yes, everywhere I am Lovanna Conjure, and just keep an eye out on what is next. And where can people find you and tap into whatever you have going on?
So, um, we will put our link trees in the description of this video. But if you're interested in learning how to do Reiki, I offer Reiki classes. If you're needing Reiki, I can do distance or in person Reiki if you're in the DFW area. I also am bringing back our Exceptionally You support group. Our next session is going to be tomorrow, but it's every other Saturday at 1 o'clock Central Time. I want to say it's 1 o'clock Central Time. If not, then it's 1 o'clock Eastern Time. But again, that will be in the link tree, the information on my group. And that group is just for spiritual women who have experienced sexual violence. It's a place for us to go and kind of heal together and process that trauma so that it's not affecting us anymore. Um, Other than that, look out for any of my other offerings on my social media accounts. And if you're looking for any type of spiritual tools needing crafted, look on my website for that. Or if it's something that you're wanting specifically made that I don't offer, reach out to me. I'm always open to making new spiritual tools for people. I love it. And yeah, we'll see you around next week. Bye.
Bye.